Have you ever sat down for breakfast only to wonder when it stopped feeling like breakfast at all? There was a time when morning meals felt simple: warm plates, slow coffee, and food that filled more than just your stomach. But somewhere along the way, did we trade comfort for convenience without even noticing? Today, we take a deep dive into which Canadian breakfast chains are worth your morning and which ones quietly are not. 5 chains to walk past and 3 that actually deliver. By the end, you will know exactly where your next breakfast should and should not happen. So let us start with the one that is going to hurt because it is woven into Canadian identity itself. Tim Hortons used to feel like a Canadian ritual, double in hand. Breakfast sandwich warming your fingers on a cold February morning. It was the place you stopped on road trips, the drive-thru that smelled like fresh baked goods, the quiet booth where you watched snow fall outside while eating something simple and satisfying. But the Tim Hortons people walk into today is not the same place it used to be. Not in the food, not in the feeling, and not in the care behind either. The first signs are subtle. Breakfast sandwiches that arrive lukewarm, eggs that look more like thin yellow pads than anything freshly cracked. Former employees describe eggs that arrive pre-cooked, frozen, and often microwaved in batches to speed things up. If it looked warm, we served it, one former worker said. The sandwich might look right in the wrapper, but the texture is off. Rubbery egg, bread that dries out fast, bacon that feels like it has sat under a heat lamp for too long. Add in the cheese, and you get something that is hot, but somehow flavorless. The kind of meal that fills you up without giving you anything to remember. The coffee used to be a saving grace. It was never complex, but it was consistent. Hot, smooth, with a roast that did not try too hard. But that, too, has slipped. Customers report weaker brews, burnt aftertastes, or flavors that seem overly sweet even when you do not add sugar. Former workers say some stores stretch brewed coffee longer than they should, especially during slower hours. Tim Hortons was founded in Hamilton, Ontario in 1964 by Canadian hockey player Tim Horton and businessman Jim Charade. The chain grew to become a Canadian institution, but ownership changed dramatically over the years. Restaurant Brands International, the same company that owns Burger King and Popeyes, acquired Tim Hortons in 2014, while RBI is headquartered in Toronto and trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange. 3G Capital, a Brazilian-American private equity firm, remains a major shareholder with significant influence over company direction. Even the donuts, once part of the brand's quiet charm, have changed. They used to be baked fresh in each location. Now they are shipped frozen from central facilities and finished in store, rarely with the care they used to have. The glaze is thin, the inside dry. You eat it because it is there, not because it is good. Tim Hortons still talks like it is offering you a warm, dependable Canadian morning. But what lands on the table feels like the shadow of what it used to be. Nothing is broken outright. Nothing is offensive. But when a breakfast chain starts to taste like it has given up on being remembered, that is when you start to wonder what else quietly changed. Walk into a Cora restaurant and everything still looks vibrant. The fruit arrangements cascade across plates like edible art installations. Strawberries fan out in perfect rows. Cantaloupe curves into decorative shapes. The menu promises fresh, wholesome, creative breakfast gastronomy. Here is the history that built the brand. Cora purchased a small 29-seat diner in Montreal's Saint Laurent district in 1987. As a single mother of 3 teenagers, she transformed that modest space into something revolutionary for its time. She introduced abundant fresh fruit to breakfast plates when most restaurants offered canned fruit cocktail at best. She created dishes that were colorful, generous, and genuinely different. The brand grew rapidly. By 1994, franchising began. Today, over 130 Cora locations operate across every province in Canada. The chain serves hundreds of thousands of guests weekly, but somewhere between that first 29-seat diner and 130 franchise locations, something got lost. The fruit still looks beautiful, but when you actually eat it, consistency varies wildly between locations. Some days the strawberries are perfectly ripe. Other days they arrive pale and tasteless, clearly cut hours earlier and sitting in refrigeration. The cantaloupe that looks so impressive in photographs sometimes lacks any actual flavor. The portions remain generous, but generous does not equal good. Plates arrive overwhelming in size, but underwhelming in execution. Former franchise employees describe kitchens focused on assembly rather than cooking. Much of the prep work involves arranging pre-portioned ingredients. The creativity that defined Cora's original vision has been standardized into reproducible steps that franchise owners can follow without culinary training. The fruit arrangements that made Cora famous have become the distraction. You are so impressed by the visual presentation that you might not notice the actual food underneath is merely adequate. When the garnish is better than the main course, something has inverted. Cora Tsuflidou herself remains involved as creative director, but the distance between one founder's vision and 130 franchise kitchens is significant. What was once personal has been scaled into something manageable, and manageable rarely means memorable. And if you think prairie breakfast chains escape these problems, you need to see what Smitty's actually looks like when you examine it closely. That cartoon logo, that family-friendly positioning. Smitty's has been a Canadian institution since 1960 when Walter Chan founded the original restaurant in Calgary, Alberta. What began as a single-family restaurant grew steadily over the following decades, building a reputation for hearty breakfasts and all-day dining at a time when that combination was genuinely innovative. Today, approximately 80 locations operate across Canada, with the strongest presence in Western Canada, but locations stretching from coast to coast. Here is the problem with Smitty's in its current form. The menu is enormous. Breakfast skillets, eggs, Benedict variations, pancake stacks, lunch items, dinner options. The kitchen tries to be everything to everyone, but when a restaurant attempts to execute dozens of dishes across multiple meal categories, something has to give. In 2018, Equicapita Investment Corp., a Calgary-based private equity firm, acquired Smitty's. The chain continues to operate as a franchise model with individual owners managing their locations. Here is what that franchise model often means for the food on your plate. Former kitchen staff describe operations focused on keeping up with orders rather than getting them right. Hash browns sometimes arrive undercooked in the center. Eggs, Benedict can come out with hollandaise that has clearly been sitting in warming containers too long. Pancakes occasionally arrive cold at the edges before you even pick up your fork. Former employees describe kitchens where many items arrive pre-portioned or pre-prepared from central suppliers. Pancake batter may come from mixes rather than scratch recipes. Sauces and gravies often arrive in bags to be reheated rather than made on site. This is not unique to Smitty's. It is the reality of franchise operations at scale. But when breakfast is supposed to feel homemade and comforting, industrial shortcuts show. The family restaurant model that worked in the 1970s faces different pressures today. Labor costs have risen, food costs have risen, but family restaurant prices cannot rise at the same rate without losing customers. Something absorbs that pressure, and usually it is quality. Former customers report inconsistency between locations. One Smitty's might deliver perfectly acceptable food, while another struggles with basic execution. That inconsistency is the hallmark of franchise operations, where individual owner investment varies dramatically. Smitty's still positions itself around childhood nostalgia and family gatherings. The menu still features kid-friendly options, but nostalgia cannot make up for food that no longer delivers on the promise. When you leave Smitty's, you remember the experience of being there more than the food you actually ate. And for a breakfast restaurant, that inversion is the problem. There is a particular kind of disappointment that comes from American chains operating in Canada. The menus are designed elsewhere. The flavor profiles are tuned for different palates. The operations are standardized for scale that does not account for Canadian expectations. Perkins represents exactly that dynamic. Perkins has operated in Canada since 1988, when the chain opened its first international location in Ontario. The brand's roots trace back to the American Midwest in 1958, where it began as a pancake house concept. Today, Canadian locations operate primarily in Ontario and Western Canada. Here is what the American chain model often means for Canadian breakfast. The menu is designed for scale and consistency across hundreds of locations spanning 2 countries. Every dish is engineered to be reproducible by any kitchen staff following standardized procedures. That engineering prioritizes reliability over excellence. Former employees describe ingredient sourcing that favors suppliers who can deliver identical products to locations across North America. The eggs, the bacon, the pancake mix, everything arrives standardized to ensure a Perkins in Calgary tastes identical to a Perkins in Ohio. But Canadian palates and Canadian expectations are not identical to American ones. The portion sizes that feel normal in American dining can feel overwhelming in Canadian contexts. The flavor profiles tuned for American tastes do not always translate. The bakery items that Perkins markets heavily, the pies and muffins displayed prominently near the entrance, arrive from centralized production. They look fresh under the display lights. But freshness is relative when products travel hundreds of kilometers from production facilities. Former kitchen staff describe operations focused on speed and consistency rather than craft. The breakfast plates that should anchor the menu often arrive assembled rather than cooked. Eggs sometimes come from liquid cartons rather than shells. Hash browns arrive frozen and preformed. Perkins wants to be your reliable American-style breakfast option, but reliable and good are not the same thing. And when corporate standardization replaces kitchen creativity, breakfast becomes fuel rather than experience. Now, if you have made it this far and you are finding this information useful, take a second to hit that subscribe button. We put out new investigations every day, and every one of them is worth knowing about before you spend your money. All right, let us keep going. We are going to finish the avoid list with Denny's Canada, and this one carries particular disappointment because Denny's used to understand something important about breakfast. Denny's used to be the last place open. Whether it was midnight coffee or a 6 a.m. breakfast before hitting the Trans-Canada Highway, Denny's served something warm when everywhere else had closed up. That 24-hour promise meant something to travelers, shift workers, and anyone who needed food at inconvenient times. But what felt like a late-night refuge has become, in many locations, just another stop in a system that no longer remembers how to slow down. The menu is massive, but the care behind it is not. Pancakes, eggs, sausage, bacon, it all looks right on the plate. But bite into it and you feel the shortcut. One longtime customer said it best. It is like they are imitating breakfast now, not making it. Former kitchen staff described food that often arrives frozen or vacuum sealed, designed to be unwrapped, reheated, and served. Even the eggs, once cracked fresh for every order, are sometimes poured from cartons, depending on location. And the flavor shows it. Hash browns come out undercooked in the center, yet burned on the edges. Bacon tastes more like salt and smoke than actual pork. Pancakes go cold faster than they should. The coffee, endlessly refillable, somehow tastes thinner with every cup. The biggest issue is not the ingredients. It is the atmosphere of indifference. Denny's used to feel like a place where something was still happening no matter the time. But now the food feels like it is going through the motions. It arrives fast, looks clean enough, and gives you just enough to not complain. But it does not bring you back. It does not leave an impression. Denny's wants to be everything. Family spot, late night fix, road trip tradition. But the heart of breakfast is simplicity done right. And when that is missing, all the options in the world do not make up for what has been hollowed out. That is the full avoid list. 5 breakfast chains across Canada that represent variations of the same fundamental problem: scale without soul, standardization without craft, volume without care. But genuinely good breakfast spots do exist in this country. Places where the food still matters, where the kitchen still cares, and where morning meals still feel like something worth slowing down for. If any of these breakfasts brought back a memory or made you question one, leave a like and share your story in the comments. Now let us talk about where you should actually be eating. Café Crepe does not look like a traditional breakfast spot. There are no massive menus, no combo platters, no all-day breakfast promotions. What you get instead is focus, a single concept executed with attention. Café Crepe opened its first location in Vancouver in 1999. The founder's concept emerged from time spent in Paris, discovering the tradition of the classic European café and falling in love with crepes as a foundation for both sweet and savory meals. For over 2.5 decades now, Café Crepe has operated in downtown Vancouver, bringing French-inspired breakfast to Canadian streets. Here is what sets it apart from the chains we have discussed. The crepes are made fresh on griddles in front of customers. You watch the batter spread, watch the fillings added, watch the fold. There is no mystery about what goes into your food because the process happens within sight. The focus is narrow. Café Crepe does not try to be everything to everyone. They make crepes, coffee, and complementary items. That focus allows them to actually master what they serve rather than spreading quality thin across an enormous menu. When a restaurant can charge appropriately for what it offers, it can afford to use quality components. The fresh fruit in Cafe Crepe actually tastes like fruit. The Nutella tastes like Nutella, not like a knockoff substitute. Cafe Crepe will not give you a traditional eggs and bacon breakfast, but it will give you something made with attention, served fresh, and executed consistently. In a landscape dominated by franchise shortcuts, that consistency matters. The Toronto story is different, but it leads to the same conclusion. When family ownership replaces corporate ownership, breakfast changes. Over Easy opened in Toronto in 2006 as a family-run breakfast and brunch restaurant. Today, they operate 2 locations in downtown Toronto. Here is what family ownership means for breakfast. The owners are present. They know their regular customers. They have direct stake in whether the food is good because their reputation is attached to their name, not to a corporate brand they have no control over. The menu reflects actual cooking rather than assembly. Eggs are cracked per order. Hash browns are made in-house. The hollandaise sauce on their eggs. Benedict has earned specific praise from reviewers because someone actually makes it properly, rather than pouring it from a heat-and-serve container. Over Easy will not dazzle you with Instagram-worthy presentations or innovative fusion concepts, but it will give you breakfast the way breakfast should be. Warm, fresh, made by people who care, and served without corporate pressure to maximize throughput. For anyone in Toronto seeking breakfast that actually feels like breakfast, Over Easy delivers what the chains have abandoned. And now we arrive at the best. OEB Breakfast Company. Here is what happens when a classically trained chef decides to revolutionize Canadian breakfast. OEB was established in Calgary in 2009 by chef Mauro Martina. The concept goes far beyond what traditional breakfast restaurants offer. Chef Mauro spent his childhood in Italy, exposed to fresh ingredients from local markets daily. He trained in Europe, developing a background in fine dining before moving to Canada in 1992. He worked as an executive chef in Toronto and Calgary before deciding that breakfast, the meal most often treated as an afterthought, deserved the same culinary attention as fine dining. Here is what that chef-driven approach means for what lands on your plate. The eggs come from a dedicated flock of flax-fed, free-run hens raised by Countryside Farms, specifically for OEB, producing omega-3 enriched eggs with dark golden yolks. These are not commodity eggs from industrial suppliers. These are eggs sourced through a direct partnership with farmers who share OEB's commitment to quality. The signature breakfast poutines represent something no chain would attempt. Duck fat fried potatoes topped with Quebec cheese curds, Berkshire roast pork, black truffle, and brown butter hollandaise. The Gold Digga, their most famous creation, has become a destination dish that people travel specifically to experience. OEB now operates 21 locations across North America. In Canada, they have restaurants in Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Burnaby, North Vancouver, West Vancouver, Langley, Victoria, Kelowna, Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon, and Toronto. They have also expanded into the United States with locations in Arizona and California, but expansion has not meant compromise. Each location maintains the chef-driven standards. Ingredients are sourced from local farmers and ranchers. The menu evolves seasonally. The kitchen staff are trained as actual cooks, not assembly workers. Former customers describe experiences that feel like fine dining disguised as breakfast. The presentation rivals any upscale restaurant. The flavor profiles demonstrate actual culinary technique, but the atmosphere remains warm and welcoming rather than pretentious. OEB costs more than Denny's or Tim Hortons, but that price reflects what it actually costs to serve breakfast made with integrity. Free-run eggs cost more than industrial eggs. Berkshire pork costs more than commodity bacon. Black truffle costs more than artificial flavoring. For anyone who believes breakfast can be more than fuel, OEB demonstrates what happens when a classically trained chef applies fine dining standards to the morning meal. That is the full list. 5 chains to walk past and 3 that are worth your morning. The difference between the avoid list and the recommendation list is not just about food quality. It is about intention. The chains on the avoid list have optimized for volume, consistency, and profit margins. The restaurants on the recommendation list have optimized for actually making good food. And every time you choose one of these 3, instead of the chains we covered at the start, you are doing something that actually matters. You are supporting restaurants that still believe breakfast should be worth remembering. You are telling the corporate operations that Canadians notice when shortcuts replace care. Your restaurant choice is a vote you cast every time you sit down for breakfast. Go to the breakfast spot you visit most often. Look at what actually arrives on your plate. Ask yourself whether it was made with care or assembled from components. Ask yourself whether it tastes like food someone cooked or food someone reheated. Then make a choice. If this video changed how you see your morning meals, subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we expose the next category that is not what it seems. Share this with someone still eating through the drive, through thinking it is the only option. Drop a comment below telling me which breakfast chain's reality surprised you most. Your morning, your money, your choice. Stay informed and protect your plate.